Hello. So as part of today's video, I want to ask a question. Do you believe you have expectations in a relationship? And I want you to get really honest with yourself and write down whatever comes up for you, because there's no right or wrong answer in that process. I want to cover the topic of expectations today. And what I'll come out and say is that it's very unrealistic for you to expect of yourself that you don't have any expectations in a relationship. And it's also very unrealistic for you to have unrealistic expectations. Therefore, the question that really comes up is, do you have overt expectations or do you have covert expectations? Now, what do I mean by overt and covert expectations? Overt expectations are basically conscious expectations that you are aware of. And covert ones are the ones that are lurking in your subconscious. Now, I hear a lot of rumbles and rumors in the spiritual community which basically say you should have no expectations going into a relationship. You should not have any expectations of people. The thing is, that is humanly impossible. We are going to have expectations of ourselves, our behavior in a relationship. We're also going to have expectations of other people and their behaviors in a relationship. Now, what we want to come to grips with is, are we aware of everything we want in the relationship, even when we keep saying we don't want something? Even when we keep saying we're not expecting anything from the other person. Now, underneath the cover of people who say, I'm not expecting anything, inside there is a sense of fear sometimes that they're going to lose the other side. And there's also a sense of that they're not entitled to get anything in a relationship. Now, I'm not saying that a relationship is a place where you go to get things. But let's face it, you won't be in a relationship if you're not wanting to be loved and accepted. Right? So that in itself is an expectation in a relationship. So instead of trying to deny that you have expectations of yourself and others, whether they're behavioral expectations or expectations about where you would go in the relationship, take a step back and get very honest with yourself as to whether you're being realistic with those expectations. So an example of this might look like, when you go into a relationship with somebody, are they realistically capable of giving you what you want in a relationship? You might be seeking comfort in a relationship, whether it's financial or emotional, it doesn't matter. You're seeking some sort of a security or comfort in a relationship. If they cannot give you that in a relationship, then are you going to be expected to stay in the relationship? Are you going to expect yourself to stay? That's the first question I'm going to ask you, okay? So we have to understand that everybody has expectations. Whether they're aware of them or not, that's a different story, okay? What will happen a lot of times, these expectations will come to surface in relationships which actually bring out the polarity sides of within us. So an example of this is in a multicultural relationship. We might see that we have different cultural expectations and standards with each other, okay? So that's it's a very quick way for us to learn that, wow, we have totally different expectations in terms of how we want to approach each other's families, or how we want to approach the holidays, or how we want to approach life in general. Because, at the end of the day, we can't fully remove the influence of our societies and our cultures and our family. Yes, we're working toward it, but it's unrealistic to think that just because we've done 5 or 10 years or 15 years of work or 20 years of work, that we're suddenly going to have no expectations of people. So instead, get to grips with reality that you always will have expectations of people. Now, if you're expecting that you're not going to have expectations in a relationship, that in itself is unrealistic. And I'll tell you where I see this the most. This is going to be really helpful for you to look at in your relationships, whether you exhibit this behavior or your partner does. Where I see this a lot is in the anxious avoidant loop in a relationship. The avoidant person usually is the one saying, I have no expectations in the relationship. I just want to go with the flow. But there's also an avoidance game going on there. Okay? They're refusing to look at the deeper feelings and emotions. And what I will tell you is all human beings are meant to really experience the depth of all emotions. We did not come here to avoid experiencing any feeling, any trait that is connected with a feeling or sensation within us. So therefore, if it's regret, we're going to feel what it feels like to experience regret. If it's expectations and disappointment from having expectations, then we are going to have that. Why? Because it's when we experience that we actually grow and move toward a new desire. So if you say you have no expectations, that's like saying you have no desire in life. And I'm not going to buy it. Okay? So one part is the avoidant experiencing that. The other part is the anxious person who is very much anxious, and they're going to instead, what they're going to do to keep the relationship, to end their, to have the sense of safety in the relationship, they're going to say, I have no expectations of you. But the reality is they do. Okay? So, the name of the game is you want to become very honest. Okay? Don't lie to yourself. Don't hide the truth from yourself. And if you have been inadvertently doing that with yourself, then start to look under the hood and see if you have actually been doing that, and start owning that within yourself. Because we all do that piece where we're not aware of the expectations we have. So an example of this may be you get into a relationship and you had an expectation that the relationship will be emotionally safe for you and physically safe for you. And now you enter a relationship and it is not feeling physically safe and emotionally safe for you. So if it's not feeling emotionally and physically safe for you, then I'm not going to label it an abusive relationship. That relationship is not meeting your needs. It's not meeting your expectations. So it's up to you to start communicating what you need and expect from the other person. Okay? And give them a chance to satisfy that need and expectation in you. And at the same time, be open and receptive to satisfying their needs and expectations of you. And be honest when you can't actually meet those needs and expectations, so they have the option within themselves. What happens is when we hide and when we run away from our authentic self and we try to pretend we are something that we are not, we end up creating our own drama in relationships. At first, it may seem like by just going along with the plan that we're avoiding all drama in the relationship. But the reality is, it's lurking under the surface. It's hiding an aspect of you that's wanting to come to the surface. I promise you, there's no experience in life when you don't have an expectation. If you didn't have an expectation, you won't be here on this planet. Okay? So, take stock, get realistic about what expectations you have in a relationship. Check in with yourself. Are these reasonable expectations? If they're not reasonable, where am I being unreasonable, illogical? And check them back in. Move toward fairness in a relationship. Move toward bringing more equanimity and balance in a relationship. But acknowledge that you will always have expectations and find a way to live with yourself, with your expectations, and to also live with other people's expectations. When you can communicate directly what your expectations and needs are, you're going to create a bond of trust with this other person. And when you create a bond of trust, they're going to feel safe with you, just as you feel safe and emotionally honest with them. Okay? So now you have the foundation to have depth in a relationship. But on the other hand, if you just say there are no expectations, then you cut off all room. So you really want to come to balance with your expectations. You want to see the other side, you want to hear the other side. But if you're the one putting out all the work and giving up everything you need and want in order to keep the relationship because you're afraid to walk out of the relationship, yes, you may have growth momentarily with this person in the relationship, but you will also allow a part of you to die. I want you to be very clear on this part that will die. I want you to get very honest about this part that will die. So get realistic and get honest and see where you're being unrealistic. This is the core of the message today. Have a good day.